Hello, everyone, and welcome to What is Access, a collaborative guide for an accessible presentation for this year's Oral History Association annual meeting. And thank you to the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program for the generous support that allowed us to create these materials. Just admitting some more people. Great. My name is Nina Mehta. I use she, her pronouns. I have brown skin, brown hair. I'm wearing a blue sweater. My hair is up. I'm a co-director at Parseo, along with Donna Neville, who will be part of one of the Q&A sessions. Parseo is a resource and education center rooted in principles of participatory action research and popular education, which honors, values, and is centered in a community's own knowledge, wisdom, and experience. We partner with organizations, with community groups, with universities, and a range of institutions seeking to strengthen their work for justice in creative, liberatory, and meaningful ways. Given how crucial it is to speak about access from a position of disability and justice, we invited J.S. Shokrian, who is deeply committed to this scholarship, to offer context and framing to support deeper engagement and accessibility in your presentations.
Thank you, Nina. This is J.S. Shokrian speaking. Hello. For visual description, I'm a femme-presenting, light-skinned brown person with short, dark, curly hair, silver hoop earrings, wearing a blue long-sleeve shirt. I'm an artist and currently a senior fellow at the Paul K. Longmore Institute on Disability at San Francisco State University, building a collective curriculum that seeks to define 5 A's: access, abolition, anti-oppression, accountability, and abundance. I want to thank Nina and Donna at Parseo for sharing this space with me today, and the Oral History Association for making a concerted effort to expand access to trainer presentations and to the OHA community. Thank you to Lucy, who is our ASL interpreter today, and to Faith, who is providing tech support and will be available in the chat during your Q&A sessions. Captioning is also available and can be accessed in the lower tab, so please feel free to turn that on. Thank you to all the Access workers who are making this conference accessible for people to participate. What I have to share with you today draws from the shared knowledge about access alongside other disabled people that I am indebted to, who have helped me in my own understanding of disability as a way to resist oppression and also open up generative practices of being together. I thought we could start today by thinking about what it means for us to be together. Nina, what do you need right now in order for us to be together?
Well, I needed childcare. And so you might see my child return from the playground, but hopefully that won't be disruptive. Let's see, I just connected with my collaborators for support and care. I have coffee and water, so I'm good. Where are you at? How are you feeling? What do you need to be present today?
Well, I'm caffeinated, I'm fed, I have Wi-Fi, I have a semi-quiet space that I'm in. I have some water by my side, and I'm clearly audible. We have ASL, the captions are on, and by participating in creating access for others, my needs are being met. Access isn't about just my needs being met. Access is about making space for all parts of myself to exist in one space. Access isn't about just having ASL, a live cart captioner, visually describing things as they appear on a screen, or trilingual language interpretation. Access isn't about just having moments to take a break, being invited early on in the process, or offering a recording and transcripts for an asynchronous time. Access isn't about just giving content warnings when sharing information that could be harmful for someone to hear if they're not prepared. Access is about creating harmonious conditions for convening. Access is about creating harmonious conditions for living. Access is about practice, and the more we practice access, the greater our capacity is to hold space for others, and the more others can hold space for us. Access is about wholeness, about holding nuance and complexity, about going beyond any standard notion of normativity. Access is about considering your participants, who you are convening with, who you are holding space for. Access is about who is being invited to participate and honoring who is not in the room. When considering access for your presentation or in your oral history work, consider what makes one feel whole, show up, be present, and have presence.
This is Nina speaking. The contexts and frameworks of PAR and disability justice shape this guide. We'd like to share a few principles of these frameworks as you reflect on how to make your presentation engaging, inclusive, and accessible, and also reflective, intentional, and participatory. Participatory Action Research, PAR, is a framework which has deep roots in the Global South. It's an intersectional approach that fundamentally recognizes that those most impacted by a particular injustice are best equipped to address the challenges and make change. PAR is a pedagogy that underscores the critical consideration about who is in the room from the beginning. It is also about challenging notions of who has expertise, how we think about and understand what expertise is, and how knowledge and research are co-created and shared.
This is JS speaking. Nina, hearing you talk about PAR, I hear a lot of shared values with the emerging practices and principles of disability justice, such as what you just described, leadership of those most impacted, and what we will expand on a bit today, which is intersectionality, collective access, and why cross-disability spaces are so crucial. Disability justice is an emerging framework developed in the Bay Area in 2005 by queer and trans activists of color in response to disability rights and disability studies, neither of which explicitly centralize the needs and experiences of people who are disabled and who experience intersectional oppression, such as disabled people of color, immigrants with disabilities, queers with disabilities, trans and gender nonconforming people with disabilities who are houseless, people with disabilities who are incarcerated, people with disabilities who have had their ancestral lands stolen, amongst others. This framework helps us understand how disability is structurally reinforced by ableism, a system rooted in the supremacy of non-disabled people and the disenfranchisement of disabled people through the denial of access. Accessibility is the primary tool that can dismantle ableism and create a more inclusive space. It defines the degree to which all people can engage with certain resources and participate in cultural, social, political, and economic spheres. People usually think of disability as an individual flaw or a problem, rather than as something partly created by the world we live in. It is rare that people think about disability as a political experience or as an encompassing a community full of rich histories, cultures, and legacies. We ask in your presentations to make this consideration, recognizing disability justice access as praxis.
This is Nina speaking. This consideration, along with these frameworks and principles, help us expand and acknowledge multiple, overlapping, and different identities, communities, and allegiances. Our community collaborations, educational programs, sharing of knowledge, and community research offer a generative place for deeper thinking about how race, class, gender, disability, and other parts of our identities intersect. These frameworks and principles are always attentive to challenging social inequalities, which, for example, means not only thoughtfully considering who is in the room and who is not, but also exploring the underlying structural reasons for that. A commitment to this process can help shape and inform the creation of a session, our facilitation, and our engagement with participants that keeps us from unintentionally reifying systems of oppression. As you prepare for your presentation, here are a couple of the guiding principles that we have found particularly useful to keep in mind. So we recognize who is part of the space, whose stories are being told, how and why, who is sharing those stories, and how each of us is a part of the process. We remain conscious of dynamics of power and different forms of expression and being, so that all types of participation are genuinely valued and elevated. And here it is so important to be intentional. Creating collaborative processes and real participation isn't about plugging people in, but genuinely and meaningfully building connections and including or being part from the very beginning of a process. Some ways to do this: by not defining the issue and the process alone and in silos, but working to open spaces for inquiry and collaboration. Think together, who are we building with? How are we building together? What is needed to do this specifically? In considering the many different aspects of collaboration, we also reflect on our roles as facilitators. Collaborating with a co-facilitator to model mutual support, active listening, and sharing. Co-facilitators can offer different voices, presentation styles, skills, and observations, and can also help notice and navigate the vibe, guide conversations, and provide access support.
This is JS speaking. Collective access. To be in community with each other as a disabled person means honoring and inviting cross-disability access or varying forms of access needs in one space. This expands engagement and participation and is an active move away from heteronormative, able-bodied structures, how most spaces are organized. Meeting individual needs with respect and attention intersects with building community and ensuring that all body minds are considered within a group. For people who are new to considering access, disabled people with varying access needs are constantly negotiating and navigating accessing information within public spaces. Trust disabled people's knowledge and experience of being able to navigate in accessible spaces. Remember that access isn't about perfection. It's a negotiation and a consensual process. It's about practice, and it takes practice. Model transparency. Don't promise something that you can't deliver. And just share what you can and can't offer. Some people won't mention their access needs. Do what you can to expand your presentation. Check in with registered participants in advance. See if they have any specific needs to show up and ask again the day of. Can you model some of the things that we've done here today, such as having an ASL interpreter, sending an advanced script, collaboratively creating this presentation, announcing who's speaking, visually describing ourselves?
This is Nina speaking. A few ideas and considerations while you're preparing your presentations. Different learning needs and styles. As you develop your session, keep in mind different learning styles and needs. Developing a session and creating activities and exercises for different learners, for different participants from different backgrounds. There should not be a norm. And this is important for people to really feel when they enter a space, but rather a recognition that honoring all forms of learning are part of our collective responsibility. Some specific examples: some people like text, some people like visual slides, some people like to be able to listen more than once. Some want to have a voice in the room, some will want to have their cameras off. And build time in your presentation for descriptions. beginning with yourselves. Outreach and participation. Consider who is invited and who is participating, and how to connect with those who are part of the session. As you plan your session, imagine your audience. Who will be in the room? What might make them feel welcome? And what do you want to share with them? How do you engage with participants and audience? Take advantage of the fact that this is not a written paper and you have a live audience there. Plan how to engage them. Should people introduce themselves one by one or in small groups, out loud or in the chat? Will you build in time for conversation and reflection? An opportunity for people to share thoughts and feedback. What will that look like? For example, you might consider inviting narrators or community members to attend your session. Reach out to OHA in advance for a scholarship to attend. And generally, and for other contexts as well, consider broad outreach from the beginning of a process to the extended communities of your narrators and across social media platforms and word of mouth. And essential care is interwoven throughout. We plan and or familiarize ourselves with everyone's needs, like childcare, water, food, bathroom access, relationship to the screen, time zones, and add breaks to your session planning. So for a 90-minute session, consider adding in a 5 to 10-minute break. And as we've been discussing, make sure that people know that they should honor their own needs as they arise.
This is JS speaking. So some advanced language accessibility information for you. We'll go to the next slide, 22. Okay, so OHA is offering access support, including ASL and other language interpretation for you to include in your presentation. So please feel free to reach out to an OHA team member if you're planning to utilize this in your presentation. Always offer multiple forms and ways for people to experience your presentation. So we suggest taking full advantage of all of these offerings and for better practice and presentation preparation, excuse me. Okay, and so in order to do that, you're going to prepare your presentation with a script in advance to share with OHA's access support team. That includes visual descriptions of any visuals that appear on the screen and a list of resources that are being provided in advance. Be prepared to offer transcripts and slides in advance as well to participants instead of or after the presentation. Give participants opportunities to make requests early and up until your presentation date. Communicate with OHA on any necessary deadlines for scheduling access workers. Be sure to provide information of the types of access being offered up front in case anyone needs to make an access request. ASL, live captioning, language interpretation. Follow up in advance with your access worker to make sure they have what they need to be prepared. So we're going to move on to the next slide, and I'm just going to ask Faith if we can make sure that the slides are visible. Right now we have a, thank you very much, navigation screen on. So we're going to go to slide 24, and I'm going to share a little bit more on AV access. So avoid prioritizing one form of communication over another, and keep in mind having consistency between the audio and the visual is important. So multiple people's needs can be met by offering a particular form of access. For example, captions. As one form of communication that's useful for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, people who are visual processors, people who are second language speakers, or for people with any other kinds of neurodivergence. Visual descriptions, otherwise known as audio descriptions, image descriptions, or alt text, is a form of narration used to provide information surrounding key visual elements in media work for blind and low vision participants. Provide the basic transcripts, which are the visual descriptions, live captioning, and try to see if you can have somebody who actually knows the technical language show up to do the captioning with you. And again, a script is very helpful to have if you aren't able to provide those things.
This is Nina speaking. Here are some things to think about during your presentation. Foregrounding participants' needs, honoring different forms of participation, interpretation and translation, and tech considerations. So, foregrounding participants' needs. We create an atmosphere that maximizes everybody's needs being met. We suggest co-facilitation or a point person to be available in the chat to support interpreters and to check in to make sure that needs are addressed as they come up, which you just saw modeled by Faith and JS. Be attuned to relationships. Monitor and or create space for people to check in. Ask if there is something new that you haven't noticed. And create intentional space for quiet moments of reflection, both during the session and during the Q&A. Next slide, please. During the Q&A, be conscious of oppressive language and think about ways to address and mitigate comments beforehand. Before the Q&A, consider offering a few minutes so that people can think or talk with a neighbor about what they might want to ask or know about. Stay aware of who is in the room, who has been talking, and suggest that others are also conscious of different people having a chance to raise questions. Ask a facilitator. As a facilitator and speaker who is answering questions, think about how to answer people's questions respectfully while also reframing or adding to the conversation as needed. Slide, yeah. Honoring different forms of participation. Recognize and honor the ways that participation does take many forms. Quiet, reflective, vocal, asking questions, writing thoughts. If your group is small, begin with an access check-in. If it's large, ask them to drop their access needs in the chat, like an icebreaker. Acknowledge also that some people might not want to share publicly and can send a private message. Some people also may not have access to the chat.
This is JS speaking. Be very clear about how interpretation and translation will be used during your session. Introduce and show appreciation for access workers. Whenever speaking, announce your name. This is primarily for blind and low vision participants and anyone who will be participating by phone or not able to see the screen. Consider those who are dialing in or using small mobile devices. How will they engage in the chat? How can they identify who is speaking? So for better visibility, have a light source close to your camera. For example, try not to sit in front of a bright window with the camera facing you. Ideally, all light sources are placed to side or to the front of the camera. Avoid using virtual backgrounds, as this can be disruptive also for blind and low vision participants. Encourage participants to mute themselves when they are not speaking. Use mute button not to silence participants, but to support accessibility and clarity of conversation sessions. So I suggest muting for your presentation, muting people in advance as they come in, because sometimes it's hard to navigate that setting. And I've done that today for while this is happening. Screen sharing. Make links to the slideshows, videos, images easily accessible for users. Viewers can click on a link to view. You can also upload your presentation materials through Feedloop so people can access them on their own. Make sure to read and follow OHA's guidelines for making accessible slides, including providing image descriptions for images and captions for transcripts or for audio and video.
This is Nina speaking. After the session, you think about follow-up, reflection, feedback, and sharing with the group. So for follow-up, you can invite participants in your session to share their contact info in a Google Doc if you want to keep the conversation going or to share follow-up information. The chat for your session will also remain live and visible after the live session ends. Spend a few minutes reflecting and debriefing about what went well and what was challenging. These reflection questions can be helpful for thinking through some of the questions or thoughts about the sessions. What went well? What were some of the challenges? How did particular activities work or not work for your group? What alteration, additional tools, information, etc. do you want to make for next time to address the needs of the group? And then you integrate the feedback and make notes for subsequent sessions. Share out with the group any resources or follow-up questions that came out of the session.
So, Access is the ground, not the ceiling. Access is about opening the potential for more voices in a room. We encourage you to visit the following resources and follow these groups for more information, such as the Disability Justice Primer, which is a working draft. And we also want people to remember that we don't want to just make things accessible. We want to work on transforming conditions that made the things inaccessible in the first place. What we have to gain from these frameworks and this practice is about committing to participate in a paradigm shift that is reflective of the world we want to be living in and be surrounded by.
This is Nina speaking. As you create your session, we know that you will be reflecting on so much. Who is this for and with? How do you and others show up in that space? How do you exhibit with integrity and genuineness that your desires for access go well beyond rhetoric and are critical to your process and goals? We know that for all of us, creating and facilitating sessions that are deeply meaningful processes and experiences require an ongoing process of reflection. And we hope that these principles, frameworks, and tools will support you in the process. We look forward to talking with you and meeting you in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody.